Wondering what the F has happened to your body and your life? You're in the right place, my friend. Welcome to Season 3 of Transforming 45, where we dive into the incredible stories of how brilliant humans are navigating the midlife squeeze with courage, passion, and a healthy dose of humor. Don't miss out on any of our heart-led episodes. Hit the subscribe button, leave a 5-star review, and if you're inspired, share an episode you love with a friend. It means more to me than I can express that you're choosing to spend time here and sharing our message of midlife revolution. So let's get into it. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Transforming 45. This week, I am really looking forward to having Naomi Fox-Reina. She is the founder of Light-Filled Co. She has a divine affinity for astrology and certifies light-filled astrologers and light-filled human design experts to bring more light, alignment, and freedom to the world. When she's not geeking out about astrology and the HD charts, you'll find her spending time with her family or hiking around the red rocks of St. George. She has 3 children, 3 stepchildren, and is blissfully married to her best friend, Ralph. Naomi, I'm so glad that you are here today. You have been very patient. I do want to say this is the first episode that I have recorded since my dad passed away. And I just want to acknowledge it because we talk a lot about giving ourselves grace. And yet in the moment, we don't always do it. And so I acknowledge that my brain function is not what it always is. It's been a challenging couple of months. And so we're going to give ourselves grace for this to be a really beautiful and healing conversation. And I'm not going to beat myself up for having to start 3 times.
I love it. And you're doing perfect. And I'm quite confident everything is just as it's meant to be. And thank you for showing up in this vulnerable way, because this is real life. This is what people need to witness. This is what we need to experience. This is the whole point of everything.
Yeah, absolutely. I talk about this on my show all the time. Obviously, it's the heartbeat of this work, but it's the midlife squeeze is real, and it's not an easy time. There are beautiful things about it. There are exciting things about it. And at the same time, there are things that are really, really hard. And so I'm so glad that you're here to engage in this conversation with me today.
Absolutely.
So Naomi, tell us, who are you and how did life introduce you to this version?
I love this question that you ask. It's so potent. And it just gets right to the heart of everything, which delights me endlessly. So who I am just me, which is absolutely magnificent and wonderful. Whenever anybody asks me that question, what I think to myself is I am a daughter of God. Like I literally am a descendant, a direct lineage of the creator of the universe. And everything else, every title that I have in this life, being a mother, being a wife, being a coach or a mentor or whatever, those are all lovely and they're helpful, but that's not who I am. That's just, trying to stick labels, trying to tell ourselves a story of like what's going on here. But I have been baptized in the idea that who I am in the moment is not necessarily who I am on an eternal perspective. And that is what has brought me to this work, is I have had such incredible and powerful and exquisitely painful experiences loaded with grief and joy and ecstasy and suffering. And that is why I love the work that I do, because it jumps over the normal language and gets right to what's actually going on with a fresh perspective so that you can make headway in things that maybe you've been battling with your whole life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I really appreciate the way you answer that question. And this is said with love and absolutely no judgment. But the majority, when they answer that question, it is with labels, because it is hard. The more I listen, I think it is because it is challenging for us in our humanness to define our essence.
Yes.
Yeah. it's more challenging to get connected to that truth of who we truly are. So that daughter of God and that being, exquisitely you, that is so powerful because that is the truth. And everything else in our lives are the roles that we play,
Yes.
right? Those are the things that we put on, that we do, that they're the way we move through our day. But I love the way you articulated that that's not who you are. It's part of what you do.
I love the book.
Uh-huh.
If anybody's familiar with the author Max Lucado, he writes children's books.
Mm-hmm.
And he has
Yep.
this book called You Are Special about these Wemmicks. And they have these little dots of these stickers and everything. And I'm sure most of the people listening and you are familiar with the book. But as we progress, as we crash against the rocks of life, like all of us do, I think eventually we get there where we realize, oh, because we get into so much pain over I am this, I am that. And I feel like I've gotten to the place where the stickers don't stick anymore. And I certainly was not always this way. I was very attached to my stickers and like who I was and the labels that I gave myself and the labels other people gave me. And now it's just like, you can call me that. That's totally fine. I don't know if I'll still be this in 5 years. I don't know if it'll still honor the purpose of why I'm here, but I'm just here to love.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's so important, is giving ourselves that space to shift and change and evolve, but stay connected to that light and truth of who we are internally. I'm very lucky to have a collection of wise women in my life. It's like the universe realized I was going to need a community of women because I did lose my mom early. And so I'm an only child, and I have now lost both of my parents. And there is this sort of sense of a little bit of rootlessness of I'm missing people who know my story from the beginning.
Yeah.
And I was having lunch with one of the wise women in my world last week, Mary Jane. So she was my high school English teacher. So she has known me since I was 15 years old.
That's powerful.
It is very powerful because we were having this conversation. She said, I've watched you grow and evolve, and I can still see you as that 16-year-old sitting in my class, like vibrant and wanting to learn and asking questions and pushing back. And there is something really powerful about having those reminders, right? Those reminders of the truth of who we are and when people who see that actual truth and they see through the labels and they see through all the things and can be there with you is in that evolution of life is so powerful.
I completely and totally agree. I love how you reference light and truth because that's really the core of everything that I do. Because when you shine a light on something, and I see light as a very loving energy, obviously there can be harsh light, but when you shine a light, it brings to the consciousness what's really going on. You can see the crevices, you can see the shadows, you can see the shape of the thing that you're looking at, and it reveals the truth. And I believe the more truth we have, the safer we feel, the more calm we feel, the more powerful that we feel, because truth will always set us free if we have all of the truth, not sections of the truth, but all of the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, let's start with astrology. So the work that you do in astrology, because I will say, like, I know sort of a thumbnail's depth of
Love it.
what happens. Like I'm learning more. I'm becoming a little bit more fluent in some of the language, and is still very rudimentary. So I do know I am a Taurus through and through, like to the core.
Yes. For sure.
Yes. But tell us about how you came to astrology, what that means for you, and how you use that to help provide some light and truth for yourself and for the people you work with.
I love this so much. So many people, likely a lot of the people that are listening to your podcast, are unaware that there is much depth to astrology because they know like you're a Taurus, but they don't know that there is a moon sign, that it's different than than their sun sign, because the sun was in Taurus when you were born, the sun was in Sagittarius when I was born, but the moon was in a totally different place for most of us. And the moon is like your inner world, and it's how you process things. And so when I first came across astrology, I was going through a divorce. I was in the throes of leaving a violent, dangerous man, and had my little babies and all the things. And so I was in full armored strategic warfare mode, and like very much having a crash course into humility and putting aside what I thought I knew, and just taking a fresh introspection of like, okay, how did this happen? Again, it was my second divorce. And so it was like, what's the common denominator? And so just really diving in on a new level. And I moved to a new town, and I went to get my hair cut by somebody I hadn't known before at all. So I'm just chatting with her, and she's like, oh, I'm really into astrology. When's your birthday? And I'm like, I'm a Sagittarius, but I don't really get into any of that stuff. It's not for me. Just like, cool, if you want to do it, no problem, just not my thing. And she's like, okay, do you know the minute you were born? And I was like, yeah, doesn't everyone? And she's like, no. So she runs my chart and pulls it up. And within like 10 minutes, she tells me extremely personal stuff about myself, things that I had known people for decades that I wouldn't articulate that stuff to. She gave me language of things that I didn't know how to put into words. I was completely and totally floored. I came for a haircut, and I got a life-changing experience. And I basically demanded that she explain to me how she knew any of that information just based on the minute I was born and the city and the day. And so I just kept going back to her. I started seeing her for my nails, so I could see her every like 12 days because I can't stand nail growth, so I have to go a lot. And she just taught me a ton. She helped me to see that the reason why I knew the minute I was born and why I just thought everybody knew that is because my moon is in Virgo. So being a Sagittarius energy, it's a very dynamic, optimistic, buoyant, fresh, expansive, gravitational energy. But inside, I'm like a Virgo, which is OCD, file cabinets, color coordinated, button down, precision. And those two energies are very, very different. And so I'm constantly in this tug and pull between them, which it turns out is one of the coolest and most beautiful things about me. But I used to hate it because I didn't know that it was wonderful. I was trying to hide. Oh, don't see the man behind the curtain, like kind of a vibe, like just like, I don't want you to see what's really going on. And so for some people, revealing the deeper layers sets them free. For some people, it shows them the map of how they can navigate out of their shame. And it gave me a language and a permission slip to understand some of the choices I had made, why I had gotten into the relationships that I did, while I was so desperately needing to understand not only how I got into that violent marriage, but also just how I could avoid any remotely similar circumstance in the future, because I had shattered all trust in myself. And so this helped me to see, like, my Venus is in what it's called its detriment. Venus is how you approach romantic relationships. And having Venus in its detriment means you don't follow a normal, typical path for finding love. You have your own way of doing it. So once I understood that, I was like, oh, I know how to do this differently now. It was tapping into that inner wisdom that was always there, but I didn't know how to bring it out to the light. So I just couldn't shut up about it because it changed my life so much, and started talking to people, got invited to do sessions. I kept researching and kept researching. People invited me to teach classes. And then I was invited to do a full certification program. And from there, somewhere in the mix of all that, I got into human design, and the same thing happened. Please do a session. Please teach classes. Please fully certify in this. And that's how we got to where we're at today.
Yeah, it is really fascinating. And so when we're looking at astrology, I love the way you positioned knowing both your sun sign and moon sign, because they can be a little bit oppositional sometimes, or they can highlight different aspects of who we are. And one of the things I wonder about when people talk about astrology and don't really understand it or what it's about is that there's this thought that it makes you sort of one-dimensional, like you are just this one thing, right?
Right.
And we are complex beings in energetic relationship with a beautifully, wonderfully, magically complex universe. And one of the things I appreciate about astrology is what you said, is that it gives us some language to express what we know internally.
Yeah. Yeah. So well said.
Oh, so they're saying that though, I really don't understand how it works. So how do the transits and the moon, how do they influence us?
So it's like the weather. Like they don't control us. They don't dictate our lives. They don't control like and say you will do this on this day at 2 p.m. You're going to stub your toe and it's going to create this chain reaction. That's not a thing. But just like if you were planning a picnic for 50 people, you probably wouldn't do it when the weather says that it's going to be a blizzard outside. Like that just is incompatible. And so the if it's blizzarding outside, that may drive you to either cancel your 50-person picnic or redirect it to an indoor venue or something like that. It's not that the weather controlled you, but you just were flowing with the energy that was around you and decided not to have a wet, cold celebration. And so that's how the planets are it's I also love the idea that it's not that they are influencing us like the weather, but it's more that they are a mirror as above, so
Mm.
below. And so if you can look to the skies, you can see the energy that is mirroring already in this. It gives us a map with some different language that we can track and that gives us that ability to kind of reflect and either anticipate what's going to go on. But I love the value of also looking previously when you went through something really hard, you can look at what was going on in the sky and go, oh, that makes sense. That's why that was so hard. Wow, I actually did a really good job considering what was going on. Instead of it introduces compassion and just
Mm.
more of that truth. You get more of the pieces of the story.
Yeah, I love that idea of compassion for ourselves, that we do not live in isolation from the environment around us. We are,
100%.
yeah, we are deeply connected to each other, to the earth, to the universe. And I know that this is, as we are recording, it's early November, and it is feeling like a energetically crunchy time.
It is. It
Yeah,
very much is right now.
yeah.
That's not in your head.
No. So can you give us a little insight as to what it is that is causing this sort of energetic crunchiness in the only words I can think of to describe it right now,
Mhm.
and how that might what we can do to move through it in a compassionate way.
Absolutely. So, like, what's the biggest energy that's happening right now that is extremely intense is that Pluto takes about 12 to 30 years to go through a sign. It's a generational planet, it goes very slowly. Pluto is at the very, very, very end, and the last time in this entire 248-year cycle that Pluto has, at the very last bits of Capricorn. Pluto entered Capricorn in 2008. We all know what happened in 2008. And Pluto has already dipped into Aquarius, come back into Capricorn, and is about to exit Capricorn on the 19th of this month for the last time in nearly 250 years. And so that is creating a ton of pressure, a ton of the finality of those lessons, and is very, 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 very intense. Capricorn is the energy of systems and government and ways of doing things and tradition and all of that. And Pluto is about total death and destruction, like slow, burn to the ground, obliteration that later results in a resurrection. Pluto is the most potent of the energies because it moves, quote unquote, so slow. It just moves slowly through the zodiac. It doesn't actually move slow in the sky. It's just so far out. So being at 29 degrees of Capricorn is a critical degree. And so there's a lot of buildup. It's like all the buildup of all of the degrees of Capricorn since 2008, just really, really like hot on fire. And then, as if that wasn't enough, Mars is the planet of war and aggression and boundary setting and intensity. And did you step on my toe? Did you look at me wrong? Like it's the part of us that just is going to go like, be all up in somebody's face. Mars is exactly opposite of Pluto and just finished his transit in Cancer, which is where Mars struggles the most. Mars is what's called in his fall in Cancer, meaning he is on the struggle bus. Mars hates Cancer. It's watery, it's slow, it's emotional, it's family oriented and moving slower and all of the things, everything Mars hates. And so you have this very grumpy Mars that is opposing this very, very dominant, intensive Pluto. So basically, it's this massive oppositional power struggle, like ratcheted up times 10, all during election week, during the
Mhm.
hottest, most on fire, charged elections that the world has ever seen because of the age of information. Because
Yeah.
everybody can talk about it and everybody has an opinion. And you're seeing this mirrored in the sky. You're seeing Pluto doing its work and you're seeing Mars doing its work. And it's like, ha ha ha, this is so much. And you can see it and you can go, you know what? We're actually doing pretty good. Just take a breath. And what you can learn from it, like you had asked, is okay, if there's this extreme stretch, this oppositional, this tug of war, what in me needs to resolve this? If all of us could ask ourselves, what in me is being pushed to the surface, being brought to light, that I can look at with compassion, that I can feel, that I can heal, that I can forgive within myself or let go of the trespasses that other people had, it would change everything. It doesn't matter who's in office. It doesn't matter who this person or that person is voting for. If you're at peace within yourself, you can handle anything.
Yeah. And I think the way you just described that is really important because it also reminds us that we can look at astrology through the collective as well as individually, right?
100%.
And yeah, and I think the majority of folk have sort of approached astrology from that personal, individual level. And
Mm-hmm.
yet it's so important to really take a look at that collective level and how it's playing out for all of us and playing out differently. So when you and I had originally had this conversation, I was, giving you a little bit of the story of what's happening in my world right now. And that the Pluto uh, return, is that right?
There's the Pluto square Pluto,
Yeah.
and then there's the Uranus opposition, which really centers around a ton of your podcast subject.
Yes.
So, yes.
Okay. So I want to
The
hear more.
Pluto is about to transit your Chiron, which is going to be very intense.
Yes.
And you're already in the energy of it.
Oh, absolutely. So 2024 has been a real banger of a year for me.
Mm-hmm.
And 2008 was, so my mom died in October of 2007. So 2008 felt like it was a new chapter, and certainly Chiron, my wounded healer, was very activated, and I had very little kids. And then since then, through that whole cycle, like coming up to now, I've I left a career and started a whole new business and way of life. We have sold multiple properties. We are moving. Both my kids went to university, and then my dad passed away a couple of weeks ago. So it really has, like, my life has so reflected that movement. And absolutely, I am feeling the deep squeeze of all of that right now.
And your moon is at the very end of Capricorn too. So Pluto is like it's rocking right on that line as well. And so it's just I can look at your chart and in a minute and a half see the specific areas that you may be experiencing struggle in.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, all of that makes sense. And as you're talking, I'm like, oh yeah, that was about the time that Pluto entered your sixth house, the house of daily routines, the
Yes.
house of details. And Pluto just came and has slowly been doing its work since about the time you lost your mom and has totally transformed your day-to-day life.
Yeah. Yes, yes, it has in all kinds of ways, right? Like because as our daily routines change, it also changes us internally, right? It's not just the routine, it is the way we show up to it, the way it impacts the way we are in the rest of our lives. And yeah, that 2008, like this cycle I have been in since 2008 has transformed everything in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I
So
can
tell
see
like
that.
what else are you seeing in there? Like what else is happening?
Well, so Pluto being at the very end of Capricorn for you personally not only means that it's doing the cleansing work, it's finalizing the cleansing work on your Capricorn moon and squaring your natal Chiron. I think I said earlier it was transiting. Sorry, I misspoke, but it's squaring it. It's also opposing your ascendant, which is how you show up in the world, your first impression. So Pluto being in this very hot spot, for some people, it's just the collective energy is what they're feeling. And for people like you, it is hitting on every personal note possible.
Uh-huh.
And so my heart just absolutely goes out to you and anybody who's like listening and resonating and going, it has to be doing something in my chart. I just know it. And so being opposing your ascendant, the ascendant is how you enter everything in the world. It's the hi, nice to meet you. My name is Lisa. Like it's all of that energy and it's being transformed. It's being revisited and redone. And so whatever it was that you were is being burnt to the ground and being completely destroyed into ashes. And
Uh-huh.
but like a phoenix, it will rise again and be something new because who we truly are can never actually be destroyed. But it's the stories that we tell ourselves that get destroyed. And that's where the suffering is because
Yeah.
we are eternal beings. The truth of our light and our power and our oneness can't be destroyed by anything. But it feels sometimes like we are dying or that we are wasting away or whatever. And that's what I love about when you really understand and you master the natal chart and you understand the natal chart in astrology. And then you can see the moving parts of the current astrology. You can see how the current astrology interacts with your natal chart and things like there's standard transits like the Saturn return. Most people who have gotten into astrology have heard of the Saturn return. It happens about the age of 29 years old and it is really intense. So if you went through anything super hard between 28 and 30 years old, it was probably your Saturn return that completely, totally restructured your whole life, specifically your career and reputation and who you thought yourself to be. And then about 37, 38 years old, you go through your second nodal return, which is really intense. And then you go through your Neptune square Neptune in your late 30s and your Pluto square Pluto in your late 30s or early 40s. And around the mid 40s is your Uranus opposition. And so this sequence of these predetermined, timed out transits that everybody goes through. If you are alive and you keep breathing, you go through these. And so that final, Uranus opposition is this massive calling out of you to live authentically. It's like your higher self going to the other side of the universe and shouting at you from the other side of the universe, hey, knock it off. Stop being who you're not. Just no more. And so that is the quintessential midlife crisis that so many of us have coined. And that happens around the age of 43, 44, 45. So by the time you're 45, most people are on the other side of it. I turned 44 this month and I am right smack dab in the middle of it.
Welcome. Welcome, my friend. Yeah.
I've already warned my husband. I have no idea what's going to happen, but usually there is radical change in the life of people when they go through their Uranus opposition, whether or not they know that it's happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's nice to have that information so that you can, I mean, not that we can fully plan ahead and be able to plan our way through it because that's not for real. Like,
no, no. But it's like surfing. If you know a giant wave is coming,
yes.
then you kind of loosen up and let the wave take you instead of being like, it shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't have this wave. Like, that's how you break your neck, breaking yourself against life.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a really great metaphor of just knowing how to ride the wave is really important. And one of the other things I was wondering about, are there generational sort of trends in our astrology?
100%.
Okay.
Yes. So there's generational planets. Typically what's called the generational planets is going to be Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto because they take like a generation to go through the different signs.
Okay.
I love studying Pluto and the different energies of the Pluto generations because like up until from like the 60s until about 1971, Pluto was in Virgo. And then of course it was other places before that, but I'll just cover these. And then you have Pluto entering Libra in about 1971, 1972, and is there until 1983 and finally exits in 1984 in Libra. And then you have from about 1983 to about 1995, Pluto is in Scorpio. And then from about 1995 to 2008, we have Pluto in Sagittarius. And then 2008 until current, we have Pluto in Capricorn. And so what this does is because Pluto moves so slow and has such specific energy through each of them. Like you and I are both Pluto Libra
Mm-hmm.
generation. And the Pluto Libra is going to be total death and destruction around Libra things, which is marriage, contracts, balance of work, fairness, all of those things. We see that exploding. Fair play, the reconstruction of what is marriage. How do I want to show up in a marriage? We've never seen, like, divorce exploded from our generation. When I was a kid in the 80s, like, there absolutely was, I didn't know anybody who was divorced, maybe a few, and certainly nobody who was divorced twice. And so to grow up and to be like the best person I could be, like I truly tried my very, very best in life, and to end up divorced twice by the age of 35 was like very ego rocking. And like I could barely process that that had happened, but it wasn't just me. Countless people had similar stories. And it's me. I contracted on a higher self level to learn the energy of balance in the masculine and the feminine and marriage and divorce and all of that. And now I can see the beauty in it once you let go of the shame of how it should or shouldn't be. And so our generation has had a huge focus on balance and fairness, especially with the masculine and feminine. The
Mm-hmm.
generation just older than us is obsessed with right and wrong and correctness and duty and precision and details in a way that can be toxic, but is their life lesson. And the generation just younger than us, they're here to transform transformation itself. I mean, you don't mess with a Pluto Scorpio. Like they understand darkness and they have walked with it. And then these younger ones, like the Pluto Sag generation. Oh my gosh, my oldest is this.
Yeah, both of
They
mine are in that. Yeah.
they want truth at a level that most of us can't comprehend. I love truth. It's my number one innate driver. I am a Sagittarius. I am the truth seeker. My oldest is a Sagittarius as well. And his generation, he and I were just talking about this the other day about stuff with the election, because we were talking about just politics and research and how do you know what's the best choice and how do you trust what you're reading or seeing online and all of it.
Mm-hmm.
The Pluto Sagittarius generation will set the whole world on fire just to find out the truth. And they're doing it. And
Yeah.
once they get to the other side of their Saturn returns, once they start popping into their 30s, we will see a generation of people who understand truth and really see it. They don't want like the whitewashed version of truth. Like, here's truth, ding, right out of the oven. Like, they want the raw, ugly truth that you can count on no matter what. And they don't necessarily know that's what they're after yet. But I see it again and again. So many parents of children those ages, young adults, coming to me for sessions or showing up in my group and saying, how do I help my child? Like, they're just doing it all wrong. And it's like, oh, sweetheart, you're not seeing what's right about this. I
Mm-hmm.
love approaching things. What's right about this that I'm not seeing? Why would an entire generation be acting this way? Well, let's go look at Pluto.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I think such an important perspective. And I talk about this a lot, that importance of intergenerational conversation and learning from each other. And
100%.
knowing some of our energetic context is really helpful. And it gives me hope, because I was having a conversation recently with a friend who we are on opposite ends of the spectrum. And but it was a great conversation, because I was able to say, like, we're okay to disagree here, right?
Right.
And that person was like, yeah, we totally can.
Which is beautiful.
Absolutely. And such a powerful way to have conversation. But, we were talking about this idea of truth, because my question was, if you think that all of the media I am consuming is complete and utter brainwash garbage,
Yeah.
and I feel the same way about what you are consuming, how do we ever come together into
Yeah.
this place of being able to give and exchange ideas? Because that is the foundation of democracy, right? Is hearing each other, disagreeing, and bringing those ideas together to make something even better.
I totally.
So knowing that this generation coming maybe will help us get back to that place where we can disagree, but be in a place of truth.
Yeah, I love how you summarize that. And the thing about truth, I've spent more time contemplating on truth than most people. It's just because it's something that's so deeply important to me. The thing about truth is that most people don't want the truth. most people, the truth always brings change. Always. You will never integrate real truth, like truth that goes to the core of the earth, truth that goes all the way across the universe. That kind of truth will always create change. And most of the time, we are wired to be afraid of change. And so truth is usually very ugly. It's very unattractive. It's very undesirable initially. But I absolutely love the scripture that says the truth shall set you free.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you do get to the bottom of the truth, like, I don't really want to be in this marriage. I don't like this job. I am not okay with where I live. I hate my hair color, whatever it is. Like, when you
Yeah.
actually can say the truth to yourself and you can let that settle in and you don't push it away and you don't resist it anymore, then truth can unfurl her wings and she can do her powerful work inside of you. And so this generation is going to bring to light truth, and there still will be people that won't be able to see it, because the only people that can recognize truth for what it is are those that have done their own work, that have forgiven themselves, that they aren't still yelling at themselves in their head about the choices they made 10 years ago. When you can see the version of you 10 years ago that made all those really stupid choices and it was cringy and terrible, or you put yourself on a path that caused so much pain, when you can love that version of yourself and you can say, sweetheart, I am so grateful for you. You did the very best you could. And I just love you. And I don't need you to be any different. When you can get there, that's when you can have those conversations with people that feel so different than you. Because if you can do your own sacred work of looking the truth in the eye and saying, this is what happened, this is the choice I made, I did it with the best I could, and I still love myself and I forgive myself, I really truly think we can't have those charged, difficult conversations with other people until we find the solidness in ourselves, because our unshaky ground will absolutely come and spill out all over when we're like, well, you're just brainwashed, or you don't understand the importance of this issue to me and all of that. But when we forgive ourselves, we can see with compassion how other people came to conclusions where we truly feel in our heart of hearts, like, that is a bad idea and that is only going to cause a train wreck. But if you do the work of going through your own choices, it is so much easier to have love and stillness and allowance and patience for other people. It doesn't even require patience once you get to a certain point. When you realize they're doing the best they can, I've done the best I can. Maybe if there was a conversation filled with love,
Mm-hmm.
truly filled with love, it might allow them to come out into the light a little bit more and maybe reflect on some of their viewpoints, and maybe they might change their mind. But you can't do it with an agenda. You have to just do it from a place of love. And doing that work will probably align your values and your perspectives with a place that is actually truly grounded.
Mm-hmm. I think that's such a beautiful and important way to approach communication in general. Because when we are coming from that place of fear and pain, then what I'm really looking for in that conversation is that person to prove me right, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
to get value from the person that I am in conversation with. And then that's inherently like grounded instead of compassion, it's grounded in competition.
yes,
Because,
exactly.
yeah, because
Fear driven.
fear driven, and one of us is going to come out as being right. So, like you said, with the generation before, which is kind of the soup that we were marinated in.
Very much. That is
Yeah,
extremely true. Yeah.
yeah. And so being marinated in that right wrong soup and coming out into the like, this is much more nuanced and complex. And so
Yes.
let's approach each other from a place of compassion and love. Yeah, and doing that healing work and being grounded in ourselves is so essential.
We need to finish the work of growing up. All 100% of us that are adults are running around stuck at some younger age in certain circumstances. The way we handle money is going to be at a certain age. Some of us are 2 years old, literally 2 years old, handling money. And I'm not talking from like a shame perspective, like, oh, you're such a child. Some of us are 15, trying to figure out how to balance the checkbook and all the things. Like, we got stuck somewhere for whatever reason. 100% of us. The narcissists, like the true sociopathic narcissists, are stuck as an infant. And they truly, truly do not have the capacity for empathy the way that a 1-year-old cannot. They developmentally cannot have control. They can't have that empathy. And so when we do this work, what we're doing is we are helping to nurture ourselves along the scale of normal developmental milestones that we just missed for some reason. Even if we had the best parents in the world, somewhere they failed us because they're humans raising humans.
Mhm.
And even if they were awesome with a sibling of ours somehow, like with us, even it's a same life, it doesn't matter. All of us have fallen short. All of us are reaching for something somewhere, and we're having really crappy coping mechanisms to be able to try to figure it out. It's just like accepting that. Like there's nobody that's like, well, I'm a really good person and I'm just surrounded by idiots. That's not a thing. It doesn't happen. So we can first like look at that. And so as we grow up, a younger, more immature way of seeing things is black and white. You have to see that person's a bad person and that person's a good person. When you're really little, you do need to organize the world that way. The problem is many of us as adults are still stuck in that. And so when we're like, well, this person is all bad and this person is all good, and we don't realize it. We don't realize we're still doing it. But when you can see the world in nuance, when you can see it in shades of gray and in the areas of color and dynamic and juxtaposition, like you can have truth and lies all mixed into something, and you can see this person tells the truth a lot of times and sometimes they lie, and that doesn't make them a super bad person. It makes them human. But when you're trying to determine like who to elect, it gets really messy. That's a whole separate subject. But
Yeah.
we have to acknowledge that we may be stuck in some immature thinking. I guess we don't have to. People can continue doing it, but the way that we're going to get out of this mess is we're going to realize, oh, I still have some growing up to do. And maybe my partner still has some growing up to do. And not from, aha, I figured you out and now I see your flaws. But from,
Mhm.
oh, I see. You didn't get out of this stage, and that's okay. And I love you. And if you want help, I'm here for you. And if you're not ready for help, that's totally fine. I just love you, even if you're kind of flawed,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because we all are.
Yes. Yes, we all are. And being able to look at each other through that lens is so important. And so I wanted to, before we wrap up, is get into a little bit human design, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the other element of what you do. And so how does knowing and understanding, or well, let's peel that back a little bit. What is human design first?
Okay, human design is a very powerful synthesis of Western astrology, the I Ching, the Kabbalah, the chakra system, quantum mechanics, and the hexagram. It is this fairly new compilation of this very powerful system that came to the planet in the late 80s. So that's how recent that it is. And it's really only started to gain steam since about 2011. And
Mhm.
now it's becoming fairly mainstream. I saw an article in Forbes recently about it, and a lot of business coaches are integrating it. A lot of people are incorporating it into their personal lives as well as the way that they're directing other people. Because the idea is that there's 5 different aura types of people on the planet. So your aura is how people experience you and how it is that you engage with the world. Understanding your own aura type will change your entire life. There's only 5 types. 70% of the planet is split between 2 types that are called generator types. About 8 to 9% are what's called manifestors. About 20% are projectors, and about 1% are reflectors. So understanding where you're distributed on that, it doesn't change. It's determined by the minute you were born and the location. It is fixed, and understanding that will tell you how to follow a strategy for your day-to-day decisions based on your aura type that will help you to create the most magnificent life for you. It also has some guidelines of like, what's your signature? What is your not self? Like, what are you here for? Generators are here to be satisfied. 70% of the people walking around out there are just seeking satisfaction in their day, in their life. And 20%, the projectors, are here for success. Manifestors are here for peace, and reflectors are here for surprise and delight. And when we are not living true to ourselves, the generators get frustrated, the manifestors get angry, the projectors get bitter, and the reflectors get disappointed. And so when you understand what you are, and then you understand what the people that you live with are, or the people that you work with, or if you have clients or things like that, it is so helpful, because In my experience, I am a projector, which is 20% of the planet. I'm not part of the 70%. We live in a very generator driven world. When I have received business coaching or other advice, it's usually from a generator. And I had tried to apply it to my life and it just didn't work, or I was actually putting myself in a place of danger and doing things that were extremely unaligned. And so understanding my own self, and now I can listen and I can translate what other well-meaning people who are giving advice have. I can translate it for what's most aligned for me. And I can also know how to give others advice that's most aligned for them.
Yeah, that's a really reflective place to be able to observe and interact in the world from. And so I'm a manifesting generator. So I
Yes,
feel
you
like I've
are.
got like, but so what does that mean for me?
It means that you are the highest energy type. So you have a defined sacral is what makes you a generator type. So both generators and manifesting generators technically have the same aura, but I like to teach that they're two separate auras because there are so many differences between the generator and manifesting generator. But at a fundamental level, you have a generator aura because you have that defined sacral. And that means you have consistent access to your physical energy. And if a generator or manifesting generator has low energy, they either have something physically wrong with them, like a disease or something is going on, and or you're not doing enough of the things that light you up and bring satisfaction. And that is 9 times out of 10, like that is absolutely what is going on with those lower energy generator types. And then because you're a manifesting generator, you have what's called a motor to the throat. So you have one of the motors in your chart. You actually have both of the motors that are defined in your chart. There's 4 total motors. You have 2. You have both of your motors are connected with a channel that goes to the throat center. And so your throat center is defined and it's connected to a motor somehow. And so that means when you speak, you have a power to your voice. I always love when manifestors and manifesting generators have a podcast because it's like, yes, girl, that's what I'm talking about. And so you are here to speak things into creation. I don't have a defined throat. I don't have a motor to the throat. I can still manifest. I can still create quite a lot of my life. I am not, there isn't a loss of power, but I also recognize that I need other people in my life in a way that you don't. Like I cannot get the things that I need done. I can't see things come to fruition without others, where you are a single definition manifesting generator is like very specifically what it, like a little bit more detail about you. You don't actually need anyone else. I mean, you do because you're a human and humans have emotional needs, but from idea to execution, you're the whole kit and caboodle. You won the genetic lottery.
Sometimes yes, but also sometimes no.
Right, exactly. Because sometimes, you do need people to help guide you, and you do need people to contribute because you're not here to do it all alone. But like, I always think about the idea, like if you could pop into my body and I could pop into your body for 5 minutes and we like kind of looked around and be like, whoa, because like, I don't know what it's like to be a manifesting generator. And then you could experience what it was like to be a projector and be like, got it. That was totally different. And that's what I just love is that we're all experiencing things so differently. And human design gives us a really, really clear way of explaining how that is. And I think this can change marriages. I think it can change parental dynamics between a parent and a child. And I've seen it again and again in my own personal life, and certainly through the thousands of people that are in my space and hundreds of clients and students. And it's one of those things that I'm like, could please everybody just understand the basics of this, like just to know that it exists, even if you don't dive into it, but just to know like, oh, this is my aura type. This is my spouse or partner. These are my children. These are the people I work with, just fundamentally to go, okay, got it. Now that all makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. That is something I've always wanted to do is like get into someone, like be able to look out of someone else's eyes.
Yes.
And like actually think like experience what the world is like in someone else's skin, because I think as humans we do forget. Like we assume, I know I have done it forever.
Absolutely. All of us do it unless we try to stop and then we forget and we do it again.
Yeah, exactly. But we're all assuming that everyone is experiencing the world the same way that we do. So then that's part of what creates that conflict and the tension, right? Because you're assuming like, well, you're having the same experience I am. Why are you responding in this way? And why are you having that experience when we're all here in the same, but we are not
100%.
we are not all having the same experience.
That's a very common phrase in our home. My children are ages 19, 14, and 12. And so their whole lives, I've used that kind of languaging of like, I'm having a different experience, or that person is having a different experience. It just gives so much permission to be like, oh, I'm having a great time and they're miserable. They might be sitting 2 feet from me. It doesn't matter. They can be having a totally different experience, and to honor that. And that's real.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that can be really helpful. And it has been for me as someone who is codependent in making sure that everyone around me feels good all the time. And I am like hyper vigilant to that, of like tuning into someone, feeling what they're feeling, and then feeling like it's my responsibility to fix that for them.
As an attempt to keep yourself safe.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you don't know that you're safe if they're upset.
Yeah, absolutely. I am not safe if someone else is upset. I know that I am, but my
like
nervous
intellectually,
system,
yeah, your nervous system is like, I don't care, reject.
yes, yeah, my nervous system is just like up and going all the time, and so that is such a powerful reminder.
Yeah.
For like, I can speak specifically for myself to think through like, no, I am having a different experience. They are having a different experience, and it's okay. It's the experience that they need to have in this moment. And it's actually not my responsibility to fix everything for everyone. All I can do is, look after myself and hold my own, like what's my responsibility for myself in that moment. And obviously be empathetic and kind to those around me, but I can't create everyone else's experience.
Absolutely. And I walked the gamut of codependency. I first became extremely aware of it towards the end of my first marriage. And the number one thing that helped me to release that codependent grip was to go through the work of initiating and repeatedly forgiving myself. Because I really think that when we hold on to our own self-anger and self-hatred, and we believe that we've betrayed ourselves, that is what drives the need to control other people's behavior, because people-pleasing and codependency is a manipulation tactic. And I say this with all the love in the world, because it's a terrible thing to hear, to be like, I'm not manipulative. I am the kindest, nicest person in the world. And I'm like, I get it, sweetie. I was totally there. Like, yep. I would have argued till it's blue in the face that it was not manipulative and I was trying to just be good. But once I saw, I was like, oh, fundamentally, and I had to just be so gentle with myself to allow myself to know that it was safe to tell the truth and to draw it out, and to just be like, you know what? I really am trying to control their behavior. I need to control how they feel so that I feel safe. And it was when I didn't try to control the symptom, but I went in and I did the self-forgiveness. Then I could allow people to be like, oh, they're on their path. They'll get there. It's fine. If they're a little cranky today, it's no big deal. Because I learned that when I was cranky, it was okay. And I would get there eventually. I didn't trust them to get there because I didn't trust myself.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And that is such a gift to be able to give to ourselves and to everyone around us. And I could talk about this forever.
I know. I feel like we've got 2 more hours in it.
I know. Well, maybe we'll book another episode, a follow-up episode, because I think there's a lot still that we could dive into here. So Thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom with us. I know it's been really insightful for me, and I'm sure for those listening, and apparently for my dogs also, who are like, oh yeah, we hear ourselves in that conversation.
I love it.
All right. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you for being part of the Transforming 45 community. Your support means the world to us. Stay tuned for more juicy episodes, and remember to keep showing up to your life with the love and magic you deserve. Until next time.